I'm Peter Buckoke, and I teach at the Royal College of Music in London. I'd like to talk to you about taking the Alexander technique into the education of musicians. Medical science tells us that we learn more in the first 5 years of our life than we do in the rest of it. We learn effortlessly anything that we're interested in. We learn to crawl, to walk, to speak, to sing, all with no formal training. We learn anything that we are interested in. So the first rule of learning is realize what's interesting about the subject. This effortless learning carries on until we run into our first emotional problems. Now, this could be at home or at work, or usually in the learning environment, maybe when you go to school. It could be that you start experiencing pressure, tension. You're told what you have to do. And this can put up emotional barriers. And those barriers get in the way of our effortless learning. So it seems the first thing to do for students is help them see if there's a barrier. Those barriers can be expressed, or will always be expressed, in the mind and the body. So when we see that the body has got tension in it, the chances are that's expression of some sort of impediment, a barrier in the learning process. Unnecessary tension in the body actually gets in the way of fluent, easy coordination. Mind-body coordination on a fluent level works very well during learning situations. And that's where Alexander can really help. So in the early days of having Alexander lessons, we can help someone with their mind-body coordination, and that can remove quite a few of the barriers. That mind-body coordination can get so bad that we experience pain or discomfort. Now that's somewhere along a timeline. So the timeline could start maybe with a little bit of poor coordination. And as we go down that timeline, it's a little bit of audible poor coordination in our playing. And then if we go a little bit further, we might get a little bit of discomfort after we play for a lot. But then if we go further, it could be that we get into pain. And pain is there for a reason. Pain is telling us to stop, or in fact, stop doing whatever it is the way we're doing it. And when we've stopped doing whatever it was, we need to think, what must I do differently so that the pain goes away? Now, the pain going away isn't enough to get right back to the beginning of the timeline. We need to go back through discomfort to not ideal coordination to perfect coordination. Questions are really useful in a learning environment. As a teacher, I think it's a good idea to encourage my students to ask me questions. Because when a student asks me a question, they're showing me where they've got to with their thinking. They show me where their interest is. And I believe that when we follow the interest of the student, they'll learn most fluently. So encourage the asking of questions. And if they're reluctant to ask questions, we can find out a little bit by asking them questions. It's a really good idea to ask someone, so how would you practice this passage? Or how would you go about preparing this movement? Or how would you go about making this sort of sound? Or what sort of sound would be a good idea in this passage? So questions are continuously used in the interactive part of a lesson. And then we can encourage our students to ask themselves questions, because questions raise awareness of what's going on. If I ask you now to consider, where's the weight of your body meeting planet Earth? Can you feel your feet on the ground? Can you feel your sitting bones if you're sitting? Have you been talking to yourself? Have you been comparing what I'm saying to the ideas you've had in the past? As soon as you ask yourself questions, it raises your awareness of what's going on in you. So to raise awareness without using video or a mirror or asking someone else, you can ask yourself questions. If we ignore pain, we run into trouble because we're well down the negative pattern, that timeline towards very bad coordination. So what we need to do is stop. It's a good idea to take a break in the practice. Maybe lie in semi-supine or go and have a walk or do something completely different. Students need to be prepared to stop, because carrying on practicing in pain is negative practice. We become duller mentally because we have to be duller so that the pain isn't overwhelming. We need to be comfortable. In fact, we learn best when we feel comfortable, balanced, respected, safe, in this sort of environment where we are happy. Learning a skill, like playing a musical instrument, is a real challenge. And what I think we have to do is build up some reliable, automatic responses to the various stimuli that we have to meet as musicians. Technically, our musical technique has to build up over years, and what we're doing is putting in place something reliable that we don't have to think about. So when we do our scales and arpeggios, our studies, we're continuously trying to create an automatic response. When we come to thinking about musical responses, you can think about it in the same way. So we build up a repertoire of thousands of responses which are emotionally appropriate for the various different bits of music that we're playing. So we're not looking to work out how to respond to the stimulus because it's automatic. And the reason that automatic responses are better is because they're faster. Habits are good because they're faster. We don't have to think how to get out of bed in the morning because we've done it loads of times before. We have a habit that works for us, so we can think about something else. And it's similar when we're performing. We need to have our technique and our musical responses in place, reliable, so that we can be spontaneous in performance. So we can respond to what else is going on, which might be other people playing, a change in the room from the audience, or we're responding to the acoustic, the way our instrument is working today. So we're continuously responding in the moment. That can only be done when we've got thousands of habits in place which are totally reliable. So looking at technique and habits in this way would suggest that we need to recognize those habits. We need to look at our habits and decide, is this a good one? Or is this one I'd like to change? So initially, identifying the habit is what's necessary. So at the college, we often ask students if they would be prepared to video their practice. Because when they look back at their practice on video, they hear what they're doing and they see what they're doing, and then they've got a chance of recognizing those habits. It's very important to get across the message that if you want to improve, you have to change. And what you have to change is probably something which is an ingrained habit or a blockage. So the Alexander technique gives you tools for changing your habits. We know that we need to think about the primary control because that unlocks the possibility of the whole body behaving differently. We need to have that moment of inhibition, or the awareness that you have a choice. So between a stimulus and your automatic response, you have a choice. So when you're trying to improve habits rather than just using them for efficient performance, when you're trying to improve habits, you need to see there's a moment between the stimulus, the need to do something, and your automatic response. And then we can help students by giving them ideas about direction and balance and freedom. That is the way forward.